Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Coffee and Open Source. I'm super excited for my guests. We're going to talk about some really cool, awesome open source things and probably talk about live streaming. So, my guest today is the one, the only Jeff Fritz. Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Hey, good to see you, Isaac. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, this
It's
is, yeah, go ahead.
it's December. It's getting cold outside. We had a tornado blow through a couple days ago. It's like it's 2020. I should have expected we'd have a tornado in 2020.
I mean, yeah. So my wife showed me this ornament that somebody made where it was like basically like the 12 days of Christmas, but the 12 days of 2020 with all the nonsense, right? Um, I mean, I went outside just now, and I live in Washington, and it typically doesn't get freezing here, but
Okay.
I'm outside, and it's just I'm frozen, and I'm putting the kids in the car. I give my wife a hug, and she's like, "I'm not gonna hug you back because my arms are too cold," and that's the way we are right now.
Okay.
But of course, this is the world we live in, and the fact that I never leave my house ever anymore just means that
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, I so again, I spoke to you a little bit earlier about this. Like, thank you for coming on here. Like, I know that this is a small production compared to some of the stuff that you've done. Um, but one of the things that I think really showcases like one of your skills as a a media personality is what I'm going to call you, a media personality. Uh,
Okay. I'll take
is
it.
is like your bread and butter with the community, right? Like the things that you do with the community, especially in the open source community and the tech community, is really substantial. And one of the things I always like to ask folks right when they get on is that why why did you decide to be so involved in open source? Or why did you so involved to be in tech community in general? Maybe not just open source, but tech community in general.
Sure, sure. Honestly, things changed for me in about 2010. I was considering doing more with the technical community. I was working at a startup at the time. I was maybe 3, 4 years into working there, and we were a small company. There wasn't room for career advancement because it was a small company. There were 20 people total in the company. You're not going to get promoted. It's get the stuff done, build the app, go. Um, so I wanted to make sure that I could continue growing my career, continue growing, feeding and getting to that next level of knowledge, right? You can only do so much inside of your company. If you want to expand your knowledge base beyond just what you're working on, you need to tinker, you need to get outside. And so I was going to my local user group. I was going to Microsoft Tech Ed at the time, and I saw how interesting it was and how much speaking at user groups and at community events, code camps, and the like, how rewarding that could be. So I started to spin my career a little bit in that direction. And my mother was a teacher. I had my second daughter was 2 years old at that point, and it hit for me that technical education from folks that are experienced and um, knowledgeable, highly knowledgeable, is something that's extremely valuable.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get in and make more of my knowledge available to folks. I started a blog. I started engaging and speaking at my local user group, and it fit like a glove for me.
Mhm.
And um, I had an opportunity to speak to a couple folks at Tech Ed in 2010. That was in New Orleans, and it of folks in INETA, the International .NET User Group Association, and it really started to click for me. It started to come together that this is something that I can engage with. I don't have to overcommit to,
Sure.
and it can be something that I can hang my hat on. That yes, I am helping people. Yes, I am learning and providing that next level of education that hopefully at some point my daughters get to appreciate and they can learn from. And it really clicked for me at that point. And I wanted to figure out, well, how do I do an open source project?
Hmm.
Where can I participate? What's something that makes sense for me? And I wrote a couple libraries that worked with
Yeah.
ASP.NET 3.5 and big deal.
Sure.
But eventually more opportunities came for me and I embraced and ran after them. It was it was good for me at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty spot on. Like one of the things that I talk about with folks, as a part of the stream and as just a part of just tech in general, is that the way that folks get educated to get into technology like needs to change a little bit. I mean, I
Hmm.
was having this conversation with my wife actually. We were talking with a friend, and he is a doctorate in marine biology, so he's very much like he's an academic. He teaches at the University of Washington, and we were having this conversation about just teaching in general and how computer science curriculums at universities, like it's very hard to kind of go from that to getting a job, right? At least how I see it. Like that's my personal opinion. Some other people might disagree, but like one of the like I'm not the greatest computer scientist. I don't have a computer science degree. I have problem solving skills and I can Stack Overflow very well, right?
Yeah.
But they
Oh
don't
yeah.
teach. But they don't teach you that in college. And I think one of
No.
the things that I love that's going on right now, especially in the tech space, is that people are learning in non-traditional ways. Like you're seeing a
Hmm.
ton of people that are career changers. You're seeing people that don't have college degrees come into tech and be successful. And I think
Sure.
it's part of the reason is that at least how I see tech and being a software developer or even working in networking and things like that is it's like, you have to have hands on the entire time. And I
Hmm.
think that a lot of universities are set up for you to, okay, practice all these algorithms, practice all this theory, and here maybe write some code that was written in like the 80s, right? Like I remember one of my
Sure.
projects was like, programming an ATM in C, and I'm like, like oh, like this is valuable for me, I guess. But that's a different rant about high education and computer science. But I guess back to my point about you with you have a mother that's a teacher. You
Hmm.
kind of have like that wanting to give the knowledge that you have to others kind of thing in your blood. I think that's
Yep.
teachers have that,
Oh
and I
yeah.
think and I think in general, you saw an opportunity to, hey, there are tons of platforms for folks to learn how to write code.
Hmm.
Like, why aren't we doing this like paired programming at scale, which is kind of like what I see what you do, at least to an extent. And you're moving in your seat, which means that you probably disagree with that statement. So you can go ahead.
So where I jumped in, where I got into live streaming, where I engaged further with that was, I had produced a couple videos for Pluralsight
Yeah.
several years ago, and I became very disenfranchised with their recording platform and getting feedback from viewers. It just didn't click for me.
Yeah.
There were already so many people on their platform producing content, but I loved recording and making videos.
Yes.
And I got, as part of my job at Microsoft, it was write content, produce blog posts, and every now and again, once every 6 to 9 months, we would do a series of videos in a studio,
Yeah.
producing, delivering, teaching,
Mm-hmm.
and it really the 2 3 times that I had been in studios and producing that content really felt good for
Yeah.
me.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the idea in my head, well, instead of doing these blog posts
Mm-hmm.
that folks will read at some point,
Yeah.
and they're going to search through, and they're not really going to read all of
They're
it.
gonna show
But
me the code part.
yeah,
Show me the code part. Yeah.
so why not make this a regular, almost like talk radio, just like we're doing here?
Mm-hmm.
It- right? But take that leap ahead of a podcast of, hey, we're always going to be here on Tuesdays and Thursdays,
Yeah.
and able to respond, able to have those conversations. And I had been shown live coding by several other folks,
Yeah.
um, and it it was something I tested out over the American Thanksgiving weekend. Hey, let me just spend a couple hours, turn on the camera while I'm writing some code,
Mm-hmm.
and I fell in love with the platform.
Yeah.
Just the first time that I had folks replying. Oh my gosh, people in chat room talking back was like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
this is something that I can do more of, and the next step of, well, somebody sent me a pull request. Somebody opened an issue on the
Yeah.
project that I was working on and sharing online.
Hmm.
Now we're talking. Now we're at that next level, and it got me hooked.
Yeah.
So
No.
the rest is history.
Yeah. So I think you and I probably have similar bones, right? So I very much got started in, I guess you could say, this community thing by like writing docs for docs.microsoft.com. This before I
Okay.
joined Microsoft, and then doing speaking, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and the first time I spoke at a community event, which was the .NET New York City meetup.
Hmm.
I was living in New York City at the time, and the second I started talking, like I was nervous, obviously, but the second I started talking, no nerves.
Yeah.
And and I came home. I told my wife, I'm like, I think I really like doing that. I want to do more of it. And then like I got on the speaker circuit, like I imagine, like you did as well. Like, and so when I started seeing you, like before I started doing this silly thing, like I would jump on your stream, and the first thing that I
Hmm.
saw and I noticed is that this is basically the exact same feeling that I get from speaking in front of people at events.
Yep.
Same. I know the medium is different. I know everything is different, like as it pertains to technology and all that, but it's the same like adrenaline shot, or the same whatever you
Hmm.
want, dopamine or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
Like it's the exact same feeling. And I said, that's it. Like that's especially, and I think that all this stuff, like Scott Hanselman, who you and I both know, he always jokingly says like every dad now needs to have a live stream, right? And it's
Interesting.
yeah, it's funny because like I think the pandemic has kind of introduced this idea of we need to be able, like there's a ton of people that were out in the speaking circuit and they can't speak
Yeah.
anymore. So like they need to get that out somehow. And I
Sure.
think this is a perfect venue for it. Um, I think that, and this is not to glorify the greatness that is Jeff Fritz. But I think, one of the things that I really was appreciative of you is you make it look very, very easy to get started, which I think that's a lot of people's main concern with not only just streaming, but public speaking in general. Like,
Mm.
I don't know if I want to do this. Like, I might have nerves, or what if a demo fail happens, or I say something wrong? Um, but like, it's one of those things where, yeah, like shit happens. We can swear on this. It's not a family program. Um,
Okay.
uh, but I do think that it's one of those things where it gives you the opportunity to get that out and be able to do the same thing that you were doing from a speaking perspective, but live stream as well.
Oh, and to be clear, I started live streaming because the only events that
Yeah,
I was being invited to speak at were my events that I was managing.
yeah,
I, it, I was speaking at Build. I was speaking at Ignite. I couldn't speak at the regional
yeah,
event at all. Rejected. I
yeah,
couldn't. Invites to speak at event XYZ in London. I submit a dozen sessions over there.
yeah,
Everyone is rejected.
yeah.
Sessions to this event over here in another country. No, sorry, completely rejected. And I still get a lot of rejections when
Hmm.
I submit content, when I submit sessions. But you know what? I don't get rejected when I open up
Yeah.
and crack the mic, turn on the camera
Hmm.
here, and away I go. And now 510 episodes later, I've produced thousands of hours of
Yeah.
live video,
Hmm.
and I've reached a heck of a lot more people than if I had spoken at whoever's conference in London, Madrid, Berlin. I'm picking European towns. I don't know why.
Well, yeah.
Atlanta, Orlando, wherever.
Hmm.
The point being, do I need those events? No,
Yeah.
because like you said, for what I'm trying to do, reach more folks,
Hmm.
reach new
Yep.
folks, there is no barrier to entry here. This is wide open. Anybody can click through. Anybody can find the link, whether it's on social media, it's on my blog, it's wherever it might be. Anybody can come in. Everybody's welcome.
Hmm.
There's no barrier to entry. Anybody can ask questions on chat, and away we go.
Hmm.
The conversation happens. People learn. Everything is eventually recorded, published out to various locations.
Yep.
Where I spent that half hour, 45 minutes in Stockholm
Hmm.
then what?
Yeah.
Where does it go from there? I lost a week with my family so that I could be at that event.
Yeah.
Now what?
Hmm.
Where I'm in my spare bedroom,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I know, and I totally agree with you. I mean, I felt this kind of jaded experience now that like there's no events. I don't submit to events anymore because like I don't know what the difference is between streaming myself or streaming for a virtual event.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, there's this idea of like visibility, I guess, but at the same time, my thought is that I I could just do everything that I want to do just on my own stream if I wanted, right?
Yes.
Obviously, the audience numbers are substantially lower, but that just means I have to work harder. Um,
So there's a couple things there,
yeah.
right? When we talk about a virtual event, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's actually several different types of virtual events, right?
Yep.
There's the invite only virtual events that happen behind a gated login on a Zoom platform, on a
Yeah.
Microsoft Teams platform. Splash that I've seen folks use, and you're gated. You must
Yeah.
log in. You must either get an email, get a password to log in, or you have to buy a ticket to get
Yes.
in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one level of virtual event. Honestly, not as much a fan of those. There's
Sure.
the open-ended virtual events like we see here on Twitch, on YouTube, the live streaming we see on Learn TV,
Mm-hmm.
these various places where anybody can connect in, anybody can watch, and they're supported through advertising.
Yep.
That's interesting. That's compelling to me
Mm-hmm.
as an open source personality, as somebody who wants to encourage more folks to learn, wants to make this content available for kids,
Yeah.
for teenagers, for college students. Hey, you want to learn about C sharp? I'm here to help you learn about it, and this is when you can tune in and find it. That is open and accessible to everybody.
Sure.
That's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't mind having premium content available for folks that do want to pay for it. I
Sure.
don't mind that,
Yeah.
but it doesn't reach my goals.
Sure.
My goals are
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want everybody using .NET. I want everybody using the blue Microsoft cloud. I want to make education easy for
Yeah.
anybody to access and easy for folks to understand. Put development materials in everybody's hands.
Mm-hmm.
There's more than 2 million open software development jobs out there. We need people who
Yeah.
can write software.
Exactly. And I've had this conversation with a few folks on this stream and then off of the stream. I work heavily with the .NET Foundation.
Mhm.
Not as a part of my job, but because I love .NET and I love the foundation. And as you're well aware, the .NET Foundation gets it gets generally pointed opinions sometimes on social media, and the response that I've always like I've talked to some people that on this stream that have no affiliation with .NET at all, and their opinion
Okay.
of .NET is weird, right? In my opinion, like
Okay.
I told them that it's weird because their opinion of .NET is substantially different than how I see it, and I understand how
Okay.
I understand how echo chambers work. And I think one of the things that's very interesting to me, what people's outside of .NET's perception of .NET and the .NET community is that it's a bunch of people that look like you and me. Which,
So,
yeah, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that because I know that that's something that you are trying to fix with the stream. You're trying to be open to everybody, and I'd like to understand kind of what your mindset is about capturing new eyes that aren't typical 30s 40-year-old white guys.
so folks out there are going to have a lot of different opinions
Yep.
on .NET, on various Microsoft sponsored
Sure.
technologies, right? Um, we're we're not going to avoid in the short term, we're not going to avoid the perception that .NET is, and I'm going to particularly, I'm going to choose my words carefully here, that .NET is an enterprisey series of tools,
Sure. That's fair.
right? It's not the challenge that we as community leaders have exactly is make this open, available, and
Mhm.
accessible to more folks. So how do we do that? We've made things open source. We've made tools, advanced tools, Visual Studio Code, OmniSharp, GitHub Actions, GitHub Code Spaces. We've made these tools and features and interactions accessible to everybody.
Yes.
But there is still, and I'm actually going to throw back to your college professors that you referenced. There are still folks who are not plugged in, have not seen what's been accomplished by the Microsoft and .NET Foundation teams over the last 5 years. They don't understand what .NET Core is. They
Yeah.
don't understand what .NET 5 is. They don't understand that Xamarin is free, open source, accessible, and helps you build mobile applications that run on other platforms like Nintendo Switch,
Hmm.
PlayStation, Microsoft Xbox. It helps you build for these different
Yeah.
platforms, and it's all the same technology,
Hmm.
right? We talk about .NET being accessible and allows you to build for everything from cloud scale down to IoT scale. How do we make that accessible and
Hmm.
aware for everybody? And that's where I see absolutely open-ended interactions for communities like here on Twitch,
Hmm.
like YouTube videos, open the door and let people come in and discover. And I see folks that do things like Unity development. They're
Yeah.
building games and they're out here on Twitch and they're talking and showing, hey, yeah, look, I'm building this Unity game. And they drop down into some C# code to write their logic for how these things interact. I see folks like Abdullah Hamed who are doing work to promote the Unity
Yeah.
community, and we're getting penetration into folks realizing there's a whole .NET ecosystem here that yes, I'm building my game, but I can use the same language and models and interact with a cloud service that's going to store and manage my server for me. And I've got now one technology I'm using front to back. And then I look at folks here on Twitch like Lana Lux,
Yeah.
who are building games literally 8 to 10 hours a day, every day.
Yeah.
And Lana is doing a tremendous job building games and showing exactly how easy it is to
Hmm.
get in and get started with these things. And she takes questions and talks to her audience. And there's a whole level of things that she's doing that now open up and show here's a tremendous woman who's making games and sharing her entire experience.
Yeah.
That's something that should be encouraging to other folks that
Oh, most definitely.
right that
Yeah.
that want to see find somebody who looks like me. And because enterprise development for how many years
Hmm.
was very much a white guy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of white guys here, but we're opening the doors. We're bringing more folks in. Right, we're supporting organizations and we're encouraging, bringing in the next generation of folks through Black Girls Code, Girls Who Code,
Hmm.
Women Who Code, Vets Who Code. Getting these folks in, showing them that this is a great technology that you can participate
Yeah.
in, welcoming them and showing, right, and encouraging and enabling them free, easy to access tools and technologies that everybody can have a very productive time using.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think one of the things that's really cool about live streaming too is that it's not just open to everybody. I think that's fair, but it's also open to everybody at any level, which I think
Oh,
is
sure.
like so like Lana's a great example. Like Lana's building things that sometimes are very sophisticated.
Hmm.
Sometimes she's starting just at ground zero,
Hmm.
and like she's going through the same pitfalls that every developer or every person in general runs into, right? Like, oh, why doesn't this work? Like, why can't I
Sure.
get this one thing to do what I want?
Sure.
And I always think it's interesting. I have a friend who says they're not a huge fan of streaming themselves because and
Okay.
or not streaming themselves, but watching streams because they don't like watching people struggle. And in my response to that is, well, everybody kind of struggles, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's good to show humanity when we do our work, right? And also, like the second set of eyes thing is so true. Like,
Hmm.
why don't you try this one thing? Oh, boom! Like I've seen many times on your stream. Why doesn't this work? You're banging at the keyboard. Why doesn't this work? And then literally one line in the chat is like, "Have you tried this?" And then you're
Hmm.
like, "No, da 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 works." Every almost it, and it's like the power of community helps in that particular area.
as a streamer, as a streamer, power of community helps. It's humbling.
Yep.
And the other thing it does is it shows that we're all learning,
Yeah.
right? The struggle to identify bugs, fix bugs, identify issues, how we triage and design functionality, that's where folks learn. Describing and showing, hey, here's the features of framework X.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how we use tool Y.
Yep.
That only goes so far.
Sure.
But showing the actual right, this is right, the dev relation, developer advocacy thing. Show, don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
Show me how to use that tool.
Yep.
Show me what the struggle is, how you fix that bug. Folks watching and seeing your thought process and being able to take those concepts and apply them to what they're doing, that's where education
Yep.
takes place.
And I think you're very spot on. Is it's not, hey, look at this new thing. Let me show you the cool things of this new thing. I think the other approach is, I'm trying to build something, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use this thing,
Mm-hmm.
not because I need to show it to you like in a pitchy way, but in a, I think this is a good option for what I'm trying to do. And that's what, like,
Yeah.
I talk with people all the time about this. It's like the technology at the end of the day, and like, I work at Microsoft, Jeff works at Microsoft, so it's dangerous saying these sort of things, but sometimes the technology just doesn't matter, right? Like, and like, it's really like what you're comfortable with as a developer. In some cases, that's not true. I had a conversation yesterday with somebody who works on Microsoft's customer-facing side. We call it the field at Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was talking to this person, and I made a comment about how the blue cloud that Microsoft has is a commodity, as well as the cloud that the big retail store has. Yeah, the big bookstore has, which is the same as the cloud that the big search engine has. Like, they're all commodities. Like, the I guess you could say what brings folks in to use those tools is perception, as well as, I guess, you know, does this particular thing feel right to me?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like a good way to think about things, instead of, like, I had a conversation and they were a quote unquote AWS fanboy, right? Like, there's
Okay.
Azure fanboys, there's Google fanboys, right? There's people that they live and die by their technology for whatever reason. And in my comment was, so why do you think this is the best option? Not trying to convince them to go somewhere else, but they said, it's because of what I learned on. I'm like, you learned on it, so you feel most comfortable in it. So that's why you're it. And they're like, sure. And I'm like,
Inertia,
yeah.
right? And your tools, your technology's inertia is a very strong thing,
Yeah.
right? How much time am I going to have to spend porting to the next programming language, porting to the next framework,
Yep.
changing hosting providers, changing cloud providers? There's that inertia that it's going to take for me to start back up, grind the wheels of learning so that I get to that next platform, use that, and move forward. Well, that takes a lot of time, effort, and money, right? And that's something that the hosting providers, the cloud providers, they kind of bank on a little bit.
Sure.
Is that we've got you here. The likelihood of you changing to the other guy
Yep.
is low. If I can continue providing the tools, the technologies, the integrations that you want, because all of your data is here, all of your login information is here, all of your applications are here. Well, if we can extend and provide the next set of functionality for the next thing that you need, you need a reporting and graphing and charting platform. Well, here's
We got a thing
so
for
and
that.
so that we
Yep.
built. So those integrations and keeping you on a tool and technology is a very powerful thing.
Sure.
Now, which also then means then if you're a startup and you're building a new programming language, Foo, you want to use Foo language, well, what's the hook? What's going to make me say I need to learn to use Foo and make that happen?
Yeah.
And then the question is, well, people have all their data locked up in the blue cloud.
Yeah.
Well, how can I integrate Foo with the blue cloud so that people want to use more Foo and I can connect with those customers and they want to start using foo.
Yeah.
So it becomes this very networked ecosystem
Hmm.
where, oh, I don't want to use the blue cloud. I want to use the bookstore cloud because the bookstore cloud has X, Y, and Z
Yeah.
customer. And if it's good enough for X, Y, and Z, it's
Hmm.
good enough for me.
Oh
Well,
yeah. Like
yes and no.
yeah, the phrase vendor lock-in is very true, right? Like, I mean, like we talk about how it's not like, oh, you can go from one cloud to the other, like, but it's not like it's not, right? I think it's very fair. It's funny that you brought up like program language foo, right, versus whatever.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm,
I've had a conversation on this stream with one of the designers for Golang,
mhm,
and he and I were having a conversation about what makes Golang so interesting, and I made a jokey sort of comment about, well, Google decided to build a couple of platforms using
mhm.
that language, and he said, sure, it's that, but we now had a conversation about scalability and stuff like that, and I totally agree with everything that you were saying, but I think that there's something to say that if Docker and Kubernetes aren't written in Go, how popular is Go? Because I think back to
Mhm,
your point about showing the like this is a practical implementation of this particular tool or language,
mhm.
and last time I checked, like they're kind of a big deal. These container things, so,
Maybe
so
just a little bit.
like I mean, that's enough to convince any developer or any enterprise that's looking to build something. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, like if it's good enough for that, it must be good enough for what I'm trying to do.
So, right, but that's also right, that evidence is it's hit or miss, right?
Sure.
Oh, great. It's so great for building this highly optimized
Yeah.
piece of internet architecture that everybody's using. Are are you really going to use Go to build your accounting system?
No, I mean
I
that's another
mean,
point too, right? Like you pick the right tool for the job. I talk about that all the time, right?
yeah.
Like, if you are a traditional .NET developer and you love .NET, like learning the hot new JavaScript framework of the month, it might not be of your
Mhm.
best benefit, or trying to use some other programming language because you feel like it's more scalable or more durable when you see a blog post about it. I talk about this with JavaScript developers too, where it's like, if you're happy with Node and Node does everything that you want, and your JavaScript and your front ends do whatever you want, like, is there a real reason to want to learn another language? And my comment is always like, it's good to be aware of other languages, but you don't need to be experts in everything. Like,
Right.
masters of none is a thing, right? Like, go ahead.
But right to there are folks who do enjoy learning programming
Oh, for
languages.
sure.
Great.
Yeah.
You know Java, you know C Sharp, you know Visual Basic, you know JavaScript, you know TypeScript, PHP, Python.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yep.
What have you built?
Yeah.
If you haven't built or and delivered value in applications, does it it's nothing more than a hobby that you
Sure.
know 20 programming languages.
Yeah.
And once you start delivering value, once you start delivering applications, features, systems that customers are using, that folks who aren't your immediate family are using, now you're a productive developer. Now you're actually contributing something to society, right? Or you're teaching folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're teaching folks, the product you're building is curriculum
Is the
and
education?
content
Yeah.
and the education. But
Yeah.
I digress. The point still being, deliver value.
Yeah.
Choose the right tool that delivers that value, and containers and having a highly optimized binary generating language like Go makes perfect sense for
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
Would you use JavaScript to build a container platform? No.
Yeah.
No. It's interpreted on the fly. You would need to build something that's interpreting, and it would just be a mess.
Sure.
Not going to work. Single threaded web server platform, so that you have the same language on the front end of your web as you do on the back end of your web, makes sense to build Node. But as soon as you need multiple threads,
Mm-hmm.
you need you need some significant processing. Well, the gears start to grind.
Yeah.
Is that the right tool for that? No.
Yeah.
But to just fetch some data, output it, okay, sure. Right? Build little microservices that do a little bit of business logic and output some data,
Yeah.
provide some interaction. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So I get it, and I get why people prefer some technologies over others, and that's okay. Go for it. use your favorite technologies, and you absolutely should have preferences. If you didn't have preferences of technologies that worked well for you, that made you productive, that made you happy, that fit with how you thought, I wouldn't I wouldn't know. I would almost suggest that you're still learning as a
Sure.
developer what technology, how the technologies fit together.
Yeah.
Um, so I think there's something to be said about getting those first steps,
Hmm.
finding your preferences, and trying different things so
Yeah.
that you do identify where your preferences are.
Yeah, I think it's also fair to say that regardless of what like language or what tools that you pick, you can spend your entire career just knowing the ins and outs and figuring out all the different things. Like for instance, like .NET. Like
Hmm.
like when you do your stream, like you do themes. Like you'll do like this month we're gonna do all gaming. This month we're gonna use
Hmm.
just Linux or just Mac
Hmm.
or just on whatever or just a Chromebook.
Hmm.
Um, and you could continue to do that for a very very long time, right?
Sure.
Because .NET is a platform that's I don't want to use the word mature because I mean .NET to an extent is 20 plus years old, but I guess
Hmm.
the new way we do .NET is a bit different, kind of, but not really. No, I guess I'm rambling. Anyway, I think one of the things to say is that you can spend a lot of your time inside of a particular programming language just knowing the ins and outs of it and be completely fulfilled.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, and there's a great quote from David Hannemeyer Hansen, the guy who founded Ruby on Rails,
Yep.
right? That when he started writing Ruby on Rails, and he started putting together these pieces of the MVC framework and active record and
Yeah.
how those fit together, scaffolding. He describes that the framework felt like a glove for his brain. It just fit perfectly
Yeah.
with how he thought
Yep.
about building applications. And right, I would challenge viewers out there, find a technology that fits your brain like a glove,
Yep.
that fits with the way that you think. Maybe it's object-oriented technology, maybe it's object-oriented programming language, maybe it's a functional language,
Mhm.
what have you. That's and if it fits your calling as a developer, and you feel right delivering features, delivering value with that technology, go. There's
Yeah.
that. Now you've figured out that intersection between right, your calling, what makes you feel good, a good set of tools. And now you just got to find customers to buy it, and you're
Yeah.
sold, you're set.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, all that is really spot on. I want to transition a little bit and get to know a
sure.
little bit more about Jeff Fritz, the person.
Okay.
And so one of the things that I like to talk about with folks is kind of how not how they got started in their professional career with open source, but do you remember the first time that you worked with a piece of technology that was, I guess, openly available? Like for instance, some examples are like, if you got, the programming magazines in the mail or the CDs in the
Hmm.
mail, right?
Hmm.
You want to talk about a little bit like how you got started in technology and if there was some open source piece to that?
There was no open source piece to that.
Oh,
No.
well, there we go.
I
End of
right,
conversation.
I got started programming. I was, gosh, 6, 7 years old,
Hmm.
and my father brought home a Commodore 64.
Sure.
And right, I was learning BASIC because there were books published, and right, I keyed in the source code that was published in those books for the little lemonade stand game. Right, or I got Compute Magazine, right? There's a throwback. And it had, right, there was source code that was published on the magazine page, and you had to type it out exactly and get it written into your Commodore, save it off to disk properly, and it would run. And this is how you built software. It wasn't so much open source as it was, right, because there was no take back on here's the source code. It was more like, it wasn't even shareware. It was, right, it was just, here's the published source code for this, go and use it. And there was no license really around it, right? um, so that was really where I learned BASIC, right? And I'm talking, the basic
The
language
basic, yeah.
ugh, was Commodore 64,
Yep.
and tinkering and working with it that way. And when I was in college many years later, I learned Visual Basic 4. I learned Fortran 77, and right, these were things I was like, well, what am I really going to do with this? I don't
Mm-hmm.
get it.
Yep.
I was seeing client server apps at the insurance company that I was interning at over the summers, and I thought this was the thing.
Yep.
Let's write some Power Base that that connects to a Sybase database and interacts with data out there and presents some sort of screens that folks can interact with, because I was used to seeing the Windows 3.1 gray screen
Sure.
applications.
Yep.
And right, open source for those years that I was engaging, 95, 96, 97, was just becoming a thing because right, Linus had just posted his first set of messages on the Usenet forums
Mm-hmm.
about Linux, about tinkering with writing a Unix like kernel.
Yep.
So it wasn't really a thing at that point. As I'm
Mm-hmm.
making my way through college and I'm seeing, some of the GNU tools becoming available on the Unix machines that I had access to, it wasn't clear to me that I was using things that were free and open
Yeah.
source the way Richard Stallman talks about it.
Yeah. Exactly.
It wasn't really until right the early 2000s that I started using jQuery that it really started to click with me that, wait a sec, here's a library that not only can I interact with, but I can contribute back to. I was using Linux in the 90s, but it wasn't so much something that I was contributing to or engaging with the community. I was
Yeah.
downloading and installing my Slackware Linux machine.
Sure.
But with jQuery, now this is something I can contribute to. This is something that I can read, and I wanted to write documentation back onto their documentation website, right? I finally, that's when it clicked for me. Even though I knew community was running the Linux operating system and GNOME and KDE, these things that I was using, I wasn't engaging with
Sure.
the community. I was a consumer.
Yeah.
But jQuery got me going. Oh, hey, let me write a plugin for
Mm-hmm.
this. And I wrote a little plugin that I could use at the company I was at the time, and who cares? I didn't share it back, didn't publish it to things, but it got my wheels cranking.
Mm-hmm.
There's something here that I can build and use, publish and work with. And it got me starting to think about how I can make those kinds of things available.
Yep.
When I had a problem to solve for our company, and we were using at the time I was using ASP.NET Web Forms with ASP.NET MVC,
Mm-hmm.
and we needed to scale and use create that the server farm using ASP.NET across several machines.
Sure.
Well, none of the state managers that were available, the state repositories, really fit with the way that we wanted to build our application.
Okay.
So I wrote my own plugin for that and I published the source out to Codeplex.
Ooh.
And yeah, that was the first project that I published. Nobody downloaded it. Nobody used this thing. But I gave a talk or two about
Mm-hmm.
it. I talked about what it was like to engage and build and interact with these pieces of the framework. And that's what got my wheels really going about, wait a sec, I can do more with this.
Yeah.
There's something here. And the next project I really got into coming out of jQuery and writing unit tests within for jQuery, I wanted to write unit tests around the JavaScript
Mm-hmm.
applications that I was writing for Windows 8,
Ooh.
right? Because that was a thing, you could build applications with JavaScript, right?
Yep.
What a throwback to where we are now. And I wrote a little unit testing framework, and I saw that there were no sessions talking about building applications with JavaScript at TechEd in 2012. So I submitted sessions. I'm like, look, you need to
Mm-hmm.
be
Yep.
talking about this. And none of them were picked up. They were all rejected. But Richard Campbell saw some of these and picked up and said, hey, why don't you speak at this speaker idol thing that I do
Yeah.
in 2012 at TechEd? And I I gave it a try. I gave my little 5-minute talk about my unit testing
Mm-hmm.
framework and building applications for Windows 8 using JavaScript. and I lost. Um, but I was recognized and found by the folks at Telerik.
Hmm.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's it's a very similar. I guess there's a lot of things that a lot of our previous guests, have shared, right? Like the whole concept of the magazine or the CD in the mail, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that's pretty spot on. I do find it interesting that you don't see that as at least a subtle form of open source, right? I mean, sure, it is, but it's not. I get that
yeah.
there's no loop, right?
It's published source, right?
Yeah,
There is no contributing back.
yeah.
So
I mean, yeah, I agree to an extent, but I guess my point is that you wouldn't have known about that source unless it was presented to you in some fashion, right?
sure,
Um,
sure.
so I think though it's very interesting. I do have a random question for you.
Okay.
When you were younger,
Hmm.
you know,
I
before
didn't have
me,
a beard. No,
well, I imagine there's pictures of little C# Fritz with a mustache though.
no,
No? Oh,
no,
that's very disappointing. um,
no.
so one of the things that I always find very interesting about myself, that it's a something that I share with a lot of people that I've talked to that are in tech in general, is that they were tinkerers by nature when they were younger. Do you
Okay.
remember being, I guess, somebody who was interested in how things worked? I guess,
Oh yeah.
like one of the things that I'm very guilty of, and my parents, whenever I bring it up, they just laugh, is I would take apart stuff all the time. Remote control cars, VCRs, whatever, right?
I
Because
took apart the alarm clock.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because I wanted
Hmm.
to see, first, I wanted to see how it worked. And then there
Hmm.
was always a challenge from my parent. It's like, that needs to go back together the exact same way. And
Hmm.
I remember, so my first computer wasn't a Commodore 64. It was like an old HP Pavilion, whatever, right?
Okay.
Um, Windows XP. Um, and I think I took it apart day two, not knowing anything about computers.
Uh-huh.
And my
Uh-huh.
dad was very much like, we spent the last better part of like 4 months getting this computer on layaway. Um,
You better fix that.
what the heck?
Yeah.
And I figured it out. It was I'm very surprised I didn't blow anything out because I wasn't practicing good static management or anything like that,
Hmm.
right? So I was very
Hmm.
fortunate. But the fact that I was able to put it back together, I think, is what triggered it for me.
Okay.
And ever since then, like, I've been very interested about like technology. And I
Hmm.
imagine, like, do you have a similar story where, you said alarm clock, but I
Yeah.
don't imagine you probably disassembled the Commodore 64, right?
No.
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 Um, I do think that there's some interesting facts about your kind of your upbringing in tech, is that like the term open source, right?
Hmm.
I think it's a term that's been coined fairly recently. I mean, not I guess recently, in like the better part of the last, what, 30 years maybe.
Yeah.
Before
1997, 1998.
Yeah, but before
The Open
that,
Source Consortium and
yeah,
Eric S. Raymond.
yeah. But before that, like the open software movement was what it
Hmm.
was called, right, to an
Hmm.
extent, right? And I find it interesting that you bring up Richard Stallman, because the goal of the open source, that, I guess, that flight, or whatever you want to call it, was the sharing of software for free. And then it got recoined into distributable free software. And I
Hmm.
think that's where like the term open source, like, really its origin is from, is like not just code that we share, but in a distributed way. And
and
yeah,
and right, the free adjective that we're using there is not free as in costs nothing,
yes,
is free as in liberty, free
yep,
as in you're free to use this however you'd like, you're free to
yeah,
modify it however you'd like. You buy a car and drive it off the lot, you're free to
mm-hmm,
modify that.
yep,
You want to put a turbocharger on your VW Bug, go for it.
yeah,
You want to replace the brake pads with higher quality ones, you want to improve the wheels, you want to put different tires on it, go for it.
mm-hmm,
You can customize that.
yep,
The software that was available at the time that Richard Stallman was engaging with, you didn't have those liberties available to you.
yeah,
So for him and his movement, right, where at MIT, and they were engaged in sharing and interacting and growing this burgeoning early community, it made perfect sense that we want
mm-hmm,
to give folks the ability to change and grow and enhance the software,
yep,
right? But this is the essence of the cathedral and the bazaar essay, right? In the cathedral, it's all set up by an architect, and it's built this way, and it's stone walls, and
Yep.
that's the way that it's built. Where the bazaar, you have all these little tables and things that are going on that everybody's kind of participating in growing an economy together, and it's loosely organized, and there's folks that are contributing by being there and interacting with each other in little pockets.
Yeah.
So um, it's I look at where we are now with, you mentioned .NET Foundation earlier, Linux Foundation, JavaScript Foundation, these organizations that are helping to promote these technologies and provide some legal teeth, some
Yeah.
support, some backing behind them, so that enterprises, large companies, governments feel comfortable engaging and using those technologies. That's a very good thing. That's a very
Mhm.
good evolution of that, so that for these corporations, for these organizations that need assurance that those technologies aren't going to just go away because Fritz isn't
Yeah.
interested in writing that technology anymore, isn't interested in supporting that, uh, you know, it, we've got that support system available.
Sure.
So it's a natural evolution. However, the bizarre, the down to earth folks that are working out of their garage, that are pulling things together and right by hand building some of these technologies, is still very, very active and very, very productive. And it's not something that we should undervalue.
Hmm.
We need to appreciate what these folks do. We need to support them. And when I see things like GitHub sponsorships available out there for folks that are building some of the basic technologies that we use
Yeah.
as part of our bigger efforts, I want to support them.
Yeah.
So a great example of this, the technology that Isaac, that you're using to present this stream today, we're using OBS, the
Hmm.
Open Broadcaster software.
Yep.
If you go into the file about menu, the help about menu there, you're going to find a couple entries there of note, 2, 3 entries of note. Um, I pay money for OBS. I'm one of the sponsors for OBS, and the live coders, my stream team, is I think I forget what it's called, a silver sponsor or something. We're a top level sponsor, one of the top level
Hmm.
sponsors of that software. This is something that makes our job, our hobby, whatever it might be, our streaming experience better, and we want to make sure that those
Yeah.
folks get the support they need.
Hmm.
So that support system is something that we can't undervalue, and we need to ensure that we encourage for these creators going forward. And it comes back to, it's free for you to use however you want,
Yep.
but at some point we need to compensate these creators
Yeah.
so they can continue to create.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, and so that's one of the things I like to talk about a lot, right? So, you know, maybe there are some people out there that love OBS or some other
Sure.
tool.
Hmm.
Like for instance, I had Jamie Reese on who created a platform called Ombi, which is it's a .NET based media management
Okay.
service that you can deploy out, right? I didn't know about it until I reached out. He reached out saying he'd like to be on the stream, and I looked into it. It's like, oh, you've got a lot of stuff. Like he has thousands of issues, tens of pull requests. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting is that it's one guy, right?
Yeah.
And to your point earlier about contributing from a financial perspective, some people may not be able to do that, but everybody can contribute time,
Yep.
right? So, just as simple as opening up an issue, having a conversation with the organizer or the creator of that particular repository or tool,
Hmm.
pull request if you feel comfortable, contributing to docs. Like these
Yes.
are all things
Yeah.
that, if you feel like you can't provide financial assistance, provide time-based assistance. And I think, a lot of maintainers would love anybody's time.
Absolutely. There's 3 things that you can contribute to any project: time, talent, treasures. One of
Yes.
those 3 things you can contribute, and it's gonna go a long way for the team, the creator, the owners of those projects, right? Those maintainers, those folks, eh, treasures, you can pay them, and it's gonna help them go a long way, and maybe
Yep.
they can even go full-time working on it. Your talents, like you said, writing up issues, providing feedback, and making that available,
Hmm.
right? Your time, send some code in.
Mhm.
Send a pull request. Hey, I saw you had a problem here with your documentation. I saw you had a problem with feature X. I know
Yeah.
how to fix that. I'm going to spend a little bit of time and let me share that over to you. One of you're going to if you can share one of those three things with an open source project maintainer, you're going to make their year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's spot on. Like, I think one of the things that people in general have concerns about over the non-financial push is that, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I can't do this particular thing because I don't have the skill sets. Well, I mean, I tell this people all the time, like, are you familiar with the tool? Do you like using the tool? Are you passionate about the tool? If
Sure.
so, you can give back in technical writing. You can give back in just
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
like you don't need to be technical to open up issues. Like,
Right.
I think that's
Right.
very well established. So I think it's just a I think also another good thing that's interesting that GitHub just recently laid out was discussions, right? Like this
Sure.
concept of like, hey, let's chat about things instead of opening up issues to chat about things. Like
Mhm.
that's a great way for people to build that community where we can grow and learn about how we can extend the platform or fix the platform in a way that satisfies a lot of different users, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And like just conversation is extremely valuable to maintainers too, because as somebody that has done open source projects like you have and I have, it's very hard to see the forest through the trees,
Sure.
right? Like you're
Sure.
building something
You get
and you're
down in the weeds.
yeah, you're building something
Mhm.
and you're trying to solve it for whatever you want to solve it for. And then you find out, oh, like I'm the only person on the face of the earth that cares about this one thing. But a lot
Mhm.
of other people care about this other thing. Maybe I should think about reprioritizing what I need to look at. And I think doing that is really, really important. Um,
Well,
yeah.
right, and this speaks towards having an open ecosystem where you can accept pull requests. That contribution back, well, that's great. You're Michael Jolly hanging out there, the bald bearded builder, and
Yeah.
you use this technology in this way.
Hmm.
Well, okay, that's not the way I use it. Send a pull request, and we'll make it better for both of
Hmm.
us.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think like again, like having the conversations out in the open is extremely valuable, right? And whether those
Mhm.
conversations are technical, whether those conversations are informative, whether those
Mhm.
conversations are educational, like the stream that you do, like the conversations are what brings people back, right?
Mhm.
Like having conversations back and forth, or I guess one-way conversations where you're talking to
Mhm.
the ether like at a
Mhm.
tech event or whatever, and then maybe you'll get a question at the end, or maybe there'll be some people who want to talk to you in the hallway. Like that's
Mhm.
valuable. But what's more valuable is you do something, feedback in real time,
Mhm.
and you're doing it with your friends. So the people that you're interacting with are people that are either they're
You're in the echo chamber. They're
yeah,
your friends. They're the folks who know
yeah,
this is the direction that you want to go.
hmm,
It's when you get outside the echo chamber. It's when you
yeah,
get uncomfortable. That's when real learning happens. That's when real change happens
yeah.
because you start to see those other things out there.
Here's a question for you, since you do have a lot of return listeners or return watchers, right? People that come onto your stream. So
Mhm.
my question for you is this: when somebody comes on that's you've never seen their alias or their handle before, and they're
Mhm.
asking questions, and they're like, so how do you like? I guess my like, do you remember the first time that actually happened, where somebody comes in, you don't recognize the name, and they have like a very thoughtful question that made you kind of sit back and like, oh, interesting. Do you remember a particular scenario like that off the top or no?
Oh, there's so many of
Yeah.
them. It happens all the time. I mean, November 23rd, 2017 was my first stream,
Hmm.
and I mean, I was building an extension to play hold music while I was building while I had my application building in Visual Studio. I just wanted to play some hold music.
Hmm.
And I had people I had a guy from the UK asking questions about, "Well, why do you need this? What's gonna be the benefit of this? And would it be nice if we could customize the music instead
Hmm.
of just playing whatever it is that you're gonna suggest?"
Yep.
Oh, what a great idea. Now I'm gonna go learn how to build an options a dialog to pop up in
Hmm.
the options, window. Fantastic. So I went and learned how to do that because he suggested, Let's get a little bit outside of this." I just wanted to build a thing that listened to 2 events. Build started, build ended, and start playing music here, end playing music there. That's
Yep.
it. And it got me out of my comfort zone. It got me thinking, all right, well, how do I build an options dialog? Let me go find a demo that shows me how to do that, and I'll lift and learn and put it in here. And it's a growing experience. And it's part of what makes live streaming, live coding so humbling.
Hmm.
Gets you out of your comfort zone. Oh, I didn't think about that. Let me go
Yeah.
try something different. And that, that's where the value is, well, for me as a broadcaster, that's the value that I get. I went and learned something new. The value that I hope the viewer gets is watching that learning
Hmm.
process, watching, here's how we adjust, here's how we readjust our project plan to include this suggestion and prioritize it appropriately
Yeah.
so that it gets included in the next release or whatever.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that has, I think, made your stream in particular like very scalable, as you could say, is that you start a project and then
Mhm.
you build that project all the way through to you when you feel like that project is good to be retired and maybe move on to something else, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's, that brings people back because they want to know, oh, what's Jeff gonna do next time?
Right.
Like,
What's the next thing we're going to add
yeah,
into X? Yes.
yeah, yeah. So I guess one of my so when did you decide? Because I know when you first started, there was things like Stream Tools and Core Wiki,
Hmm.
and now you've kind of transitioned to these this like still building a shared or a shared idea across multiple
Hmm.
streams, but it's all in a theme.
Hmm.
So at what point in time did you think of a theme being something that would be very fun to play with the audience?
Stream tools, I tried to do that, right? That was one of the first things. That's kind of like an initiation thing. And the
Hmm.
folks that are watching here in chat, pr- probably you've probably seen enough folks live streaming do this, right?
Yeah.
It's the initiation of, hey, I'm going to build a chat bot to manage
Hmm.
my channel. I'm a developer. I can listen to
Yep.
the IRC channel and respond and interact. And that's what Stream Tools tried to be. And right, I tried to make that something fun that folks could interact with. And there was a gentleman in Germany who sent a whole bunch of pull requests to wire up the Stream Tools so they would work on Mixer.
Hmm.
I mean, and this was month 2, month 3
Yep.
that I was live coding, January, February 2018.
Hmm.
And I started to get, when you get those pull requests as a live coder, now you're talking. Now it's something that I'm doing something folks are interested in
Yep.
and they want to see develop. They want to hear their name when you're writing code and you're
Hmm.
talking. They want to see their code. They want to hear your feedback on how they submitted, how they accomplished the task. And Stream Tools, I got to a point with it 6 months out where it was like, you know what? This is, quite frankly, boring because everybody does it,
Sure.
right? It's not unique. What makes me unique? What makes me stand out? And I got into and I started doing Core Wiki. In Core Wiki, let's do a content management system, right? We had iBuySpy with .NET Framework back in the day, but what's the content management system that everybody learns how to do that works with .NET Core? And we
Hmm.
started down this idea of Core Wiki, and we started doing it actually on stage at Dev Intersection
Yep.
in Orlando, which was a whole nother experience to try and do live coding with a live audience
Yep.
and like an in-person audience and on stream. Whew, that was different, right? That was an experiment and it was hard. But what we learned was we could do this. This was something that we
Hmm.
could accomplish. And we didn't get as much engagement from the in-person audience as we did from the online audience. I think
Sure.
the in-person folks just didn't get it,
Hmm.
right? Why are these people who are in chat, why are they getting Fritz's attention instead of me here?
Yeah.
So right, that was an experiment that, quite frankly, it went in a direction that became too complicated.
Sure.
There were folks who said, "Oh, you need a CQRS architecture. We need to implement DDD principles and these types of things," and it became way too complicated
Yep.
and unmanageable for a learning project.
Yeah.
Right? We built for every possible scenario, but because we built for every possible scenario, we couldn't do the simple things because it was so complicated to just say, create a new article
Yeah.
in the wiki.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pain in the neck. So getting into some of the projects that I've been working on recently, over the past year, we've been working on these Blazor web forms components.
Hmm.
that was something that I felt would meet a need to help show folks you can migrate from web forms, ASP.NET web forms to Blazor.
Yep.
It showed people that you could build with Blazor. And because we used that same project building this component set, whether it was my minimal March month, and I built everything at the command line with VI, and we even used, you mentioned, a Chromebook for a week or two.
Yeah.
I mean, I spent $200 on a commodity Chromebook
Yep.
at a Walmart. I even showed folks, here I am walking through Walmart and buying the Chromebook.
Yeah.
Like, that's a thing. You can do this, and you can
Yep.
build with Blazor on cheap and easy hardware.
Yep.
Worked out, made perfect sense. Right, and we took it then and we did it on a Mac. You can build with Blazor on a Mac. Here it is.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, Visual Studio Code, VI, Emacs, what have you. Right, and taking that and then getting frustrated with YAML and saying, well, I don't care about YAML anymore, and it's inaccessible, and why do I want to do this with spaces and all this stupid markup? Let's eliminate all that, make it just tabs. The only markup we have is tabs and carriage returns. That's it.
Yeah.
That's a markup language. And we invented Tamil, and it started as a complete goof, and it was something that
Yeah.
quite literally, Isaac, I was talking to the chat room, and I was saying, why do we need all of these things? And folks were laughing along
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
smirking like, yeah, you're right. This is kind of silly.
Yeah.
If we can do everything, it's just tabs. So we started on the Tamil project, and we've got folks saying, well, it'd be great if I had a Rust interpreter or I had a TypeScript interpreter. And we're learning to get outside of our comfort zone and try those
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's part of, I want to come back and see what's next. I want to see what kind of strange things can we get into and we can try and do differently,
Yeah.
right? Nothing has to be production ready,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
but it's nice when it is.
Yeah. I
So the
mean,
project
yeah.
I've been working on for the last week, it's pretty production ready, and it's growing. It's growing quickly. We'll see what happens here in the month of December and that's not an open source project, but as I deploy the next series of features, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. It's like, I think it's very, very funny that we talk about YAML and JSON and all these different things, right? Like, I had to force myself to learn YAML because I started to use a lot of GitHub Actions, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, what I do end up usually is I write it and then I just throw it into some formatter, and that tells me what I did wrong, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're getting towards the end of the stream here, and
Yep.
I think one of the things that I'll also, which has been really impactful for what you're doing, is that you've built this community of live streamers, right? Like, the live coders, and Michael Crump is here in chat. He's a live coder, and I know we don't have a lot of time left. We could talk about live coders for a while, but I'm curious to know, when you decided that this live streaming thing, like, you wanted to invest as much of your time in it as you can, and you noticed that there was a community that wasn't small of people out there that were doing similar things that you were doing, but maybe using different technologies, using different tools, but most importantly had different ways to go about doing things, different voices. So at what point in time did you decide we should all just team up, like, your favorite superhero Justice League or Avengers, right? Like, when did when did you decide that was probably a good step to do?
September 2018. It was TwitchCon 2018, San Jose. It was in. I tell people this story. It was at a dinner. There were 6 of us sitting around a table. Brian Clark, friend of ours, also works at Microsoft, had just given a session on how to hook up Twitch chat to Lightbulb that he had in the background there during his streams. Suze Hinton was working at Microsoft at the time. She had given a session at TwitchCon the year before about how to hook up Twitch chat to affect lights on a tiara that she was wearing.
Sure.
And Mark Miller from Dev Express was there. Eric Gooseman, Talk to Me Gooseman, was there. 1, 2, 3. Oh, and Cassie and Wren. They were there. um, JavaScript IoT developer, and we had this dinner, and we were talking around how we all do live coding kind of differently. Whether
Yeah.
it's JavaScript over here, it's .NET for a couple of us. How do we, right? We talked about some of the things that we learned and we figured out along the way to help make our development experience better, interact with viewers, and kind of raise the profile of what we were doing.
Sure.
And at the same time, when Brian came off stage from his session at TwitchCon, right? TwitchCon is Twitch's annual conference
Hmm.
for creators, streamers, and viewers to meet those creators, right? That in meet space, in the Earl, in real life, right? Being able to interact with folks. Right when Brian came off stage, there were a handful of other folks that wrote code that we didn't know. They were outside of our space.
Yeah.
And there were folks there like Lucky Number 11, and it was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. I know of you. I hadn't
Yeah.
watched too many of your streams, but right, we very much at that at that dinner with the six of us said, there's something here
Yeah.
that if we were to, if we were to celebrate science and technology on Twitch the
Yeah.
same way that Twitch celebrates Fortnite,
Hmm.
PUBG,
Yeah.
these games, right? Hearthstone. If we were to celebrate it the same way, bring together and form a team, what does that look like? What does that mean? And I'll never forget, it was Susan's idea. Hey, it'd be great if we had a team jersey. All these esports teams, they
Yeah.
have jerseys. What does a developer jersey look like? And gosh, if we had somebody reach partner, we could form a team and we could do some of these things. It'd be kind of cool.
Hmm.
And we all kind of walked away from that event, and we had this sense of unity, and we were very embedded with the creative community on Twitch at the time, because science and technology wasn't categories, wasn't a
Yeah.
thing. It was communities.
Sure.
So we were with the creative community and folks like Fierce Kittens, folks like Fairy Wings, Quilt Tony, Imperial. She was Imperial Girl at the time. Imperial. We pulled them. I very much was ingrained in their community. Um, Vex FX, right? Vex is another member of the Live Coders team, and Vex does he does Hollywood level special effects, whether
Yeah.
it's models and lighting and blood and all kinds of stuff. My gosh, um, and we would talk to each other and we would figure out, well, how can we make our streams better?
Yeah.
And that was definitely a thing that we felt and said, how do we do this now? Right. The creative folks that are doing those types of crafts, right. And building, right. Whether it's Fairy Wings doing chainmail, right.
Yeah.
Building chainmail on
Yeah.
stream.
Super cool.
Oh my gosh. Or but for us doing software
Hmm.
technology, how do those things fit together? How do we encourage
Yeah.
and grow that? Well, oh my gosh, I gotta run. I'm supposed to be over. I have another event that I'm supposed to be at coming
Okay.
up here. I thought I had another half hour for that.
Maybe you have to prep.
Um, no, I thought I had a half hour to go
And
before
ladies
that.
and gentlemen, this is the joy of live stream, is at any point in
Right?
time, right? Like we've been on stream with my kid interrupting me. So,
Yeah.
Jeff has
I've
one of
got another session that I'm going to be delivering. I thought I had about a half hour for that, but
no worries. Well, so let's wrap
we can
up.
talk more about this another time.
Of course, yeah. Like I would love to have Jeff on the stream again. Like obviously, super super fun guy to talk to. I want to thank you so much for joining. So for everybody that's on the stream, thank you for coming in. Thank you for chatting with us, and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, everybody.
All right.